Imagine this. Right at this moment, China is defying nature itself, redirecting massive rivers and transporting entire seas of water farther than the distance from New York to Los Angeles. If you're standing in Beijing today, the water beneath the city traveled more than 1,400 kilometers through underground passages, forced upward against gravity, and guided through channels as wide as interstate roads. Welcome to the Planetary File, your source for the planet's most extraordinary engineering stories. This is the story of humanity's largest water engineering undertaking ever attempted, a $62 billion gamble, half a century of relentless construction, 3 colossal pathways stretching nearly 3,000 kilometers combined. And the project still isn't complete. Before we explore how China is rewriting geography itself to rescue 400 million people from drought, smash that like button and subscribe with notifications activated. We bring you incredible true accounts of human ingenuity you simply won't discover elsewhere. Today, you'll witness China's controversial answer to an existential water emergency and discover why experts can't agree whether it's brilliance or catastrophe. Let me show you the crisis that triggered everything. China holds 1/5 of humanity but controls just 7% of global fresh water. Worse yet, that water sits in all the wrong places. Southern China possesses 80% of the nation's water. The Yangtze basin gets drenched with rain, experiencing devastating floods year after year. Waters surge over banks, farmland drowns, and liquid abundance creates chaos. Meanwhile, northern China, where Beijing, Tianjin, and countless millions reside, faces severe dehydration. The North China Plain grows 60% of the nation's wheat and 45% of its maize, yet annual precipitation barely exceeds 500 millimeters. That matches Phoenix's rainfall, except Phoenix doesn't need to nourish 1 billion humans. The 1980s brought the emergency to a breaking point. The Yellow River, historically revered as China's life-giving artery, couldn't reach the ocean anymore. During 1997, the Yellow River never touched the sea for 226 consecutive days. A legendary river simply vanished. Underground water reserves were being extracted beyond sustainable limits. The North China Plain's aquifer levels plummeted 3 meters annually. Farmers bored wells deeper and deeper, chasing disappearing reserves. Beijing itself was subsiding as the earth underneath collapsed from aggressive water mining. Wells that once struck water at 20 meters now required boring down 200 meters. Certain regions extracted so much subterranean water that land surfaces sank dramatically, spawning enormous sinkholes and demolishing structures. Industrial facilities closed. Harvests withered, urban centers rationed water supplies, citizens queued with containers to collect rationed amounts. The capital of Earth's most populous country was depleting the most fundamental resource sustaining human existence. Action became mandatory. But China's chosen solution bordered on insanity. The concept wasn't novel. Actually, it was 2 millennia old. Chinese planners had fantasized about channeling southern water northward for over 2,000 years. However, the modern scale demanded was absolutely staggering. The blueprint: construct 3 monumental corridors, eastern, central, and western pathways to channel 44.8 billion cubic meters of water yearly from the Yangtze watershed to the parched northern territories. That volume could fill 18 million Olympic pools annually. For perspective, imagine capturing every drop from Niagara Falls for 48 continuous hours. That equals this project's annual water movement. The span, 2,700 kilometers combined across all 3 corridors. Laid continuously, this network would extend coast to coast across America. This transcends traditional canal thinking. It's a liquid superhighway transporting oceanic volumes across an entire nation. The price tag, approximately $62 billion, although certain economists suspect the authentic figure approaches $80 billion. That exceeds NASA's yearly budget. It surpasses what most nations invest in total infrastructure over 10 years. The schedule? construction launched in 2002. The Eastern Pathway activated in 2013. The Central Corridor opened in 2014. The Western route remains in design phases and might not finish for another 20 decades. 5 decades, 3 complete generations of laborers, hundreds of thousands of technical experts, all dedicated to relocating water from abundance to scarcity. But here's where reality becomes truly astonishing. This isn't merely pipelines and ditches. Making this function required China to execute engineering achievements that seem to violate possibility itself. Let's examine the Eastern Pathway first, because it demonstrates just how audacious this undertaking truly is. The Eastern Corridor extends 1,156 kilometers from the Yangtze near Yangtze City, ascending through Jiangsu Province, passing beneath the Yellow River, ultimately arriving at Tianjin near Beijing. Here's the fundamental challenge. The Yangtze flows at nearly sea level elevation. Tianjin sits at 5 meters above sea level. Sounds trivial, correct? Absolutely wrong. Water refuses to climb hills. Never did, never will. Elementary physics. So, how do you propel billions of cubic meters uphill across 1,000 kilometers? The answer: pumping stations. Colossal pumping stations. 13 monumental facilities, each representing engineering genius. These aren't conventional water pumps. These are industrial behemoths capable of elevating millions of gallons every 60 seconds. The largest facility, positioned at Yangtze Lake, operates 8 pump assemblies. Each assembly transfers 40 cubic meters per second. That's 10,000 gallons each second. Operate that annually and you've delivered sufficient water for 2 million city residents. The electricity consumption driving these pumps is staggering. The Eastern Pathway alone devours roughly 500 million kilowatt-hours yearly just propelling water northward. That's sufficient electricity to energize 50,000 households for 12 months, consumed entirely for uphill water movement. Yet pumps weren't the greatest obstacle. The greatest obstacle was traversing the Yellow River. The Yellow River courses east-west through northern China. The canal required crossing it to access Beijing. But how do you cross one river with another river? You can't construct a water bridge. Water doesn't travel on overpasses. The answer: bore a tunnel directly underneath the Yellow River. During 2003, Chinese engineers started drilling twin tubes beneath the Yellow Riverbed. Each tube measures 9.3 meters in diameter and extends 634 meters in length. Consider that achievement. They excavated 2 enormous conduits under one of China's most celebrated rivers, penetrating unstable sediment accumulated over geologic ages. The tunnels rest 23 meters below the riverbed. Overhead, the Yellow River flows, transporting massive sediment loads. Beneath, pristine Yangtze water travels north through pressurized conduits, never intermingling. Upon completion in 2003, it became Earth's largest subsurface water tunnel crossing beneath a river. Workers confronted perpetual flooding risks, shifting sediment, and genuine catastrophic collapse potential if the Yellow River penetrated through. Yet, they succeeded. Water now travels beneath the Yellow River, contradicting geographical reality. If the Eastern Pathway emphasized pumps and tunnels, the Central Pathway emphasized reservoirs and human displacement. The Central Corridor spans 1,432 kilometers from Danjiangkou Reservoir on the Han River, a Yangtze tributary, directly north to Beijing. Unlike the Eastern Pathway, the Central route exploits gravity primarily. Water descends naturally, predominantly. But enabling this required China to elevate the source water level. That necessitated expanding Danjiangkou Reservoir. In 2005, they elevated the Danjiangkou Dam by 14.6 meters, expanding the reservoir's capacity from 17.4 billion cubic meters to 29.1 billion cubic meters. That's almost a 70% capacity boost. But raising the dam carried consequences. As water levels climbed, entire settlements vanished underwater. Residences, agricultural land, religious sites, ancestral burial grounds all drowned. Approximately 330,000 individuals were forcibly resettled. They received compensation, new dwellings in relocation zones, but forfeited their land, their homes, and their cultural heritage. Farmers who cultivated identical fields across generations found themselves in strange environments, struggling to adjust. This represents the human price seldom mentioned in triumphant narratives surrounding China's megaprojects. Hundreds of thousands of existences disrupted, communities obliterated, all justified by progress and water security. The canal itself constitutes an engineering masterpiece. It's an exposed channel, 50 to 80 meters wide, concreted lined to prevent water loss. In certain segments, it resembles a colossal motorway, except instead of vehicles, there's only flowing water, advancing steadily northward. The Central Corridor incorporates 64 tunnels and 1,432 bridges. Yes, bridges designed for the canal itself. When highways or rail lines intersect the canal's trajectory, engineers constructed aqueducts, elevated channels carrying water over obstacles. Among the most remarkable is the Shanghai Aqueduct, which conveys the canal above the Shanghai River. Envision one river flowing above another river. It's genuinely surreal. Water purity is paramount. The central pathway delivers drinking water straight to Beijing, so contamination would prove catastrophic. The Chinese administration established rigorous pollution restrictions along the complete route. Manufacturing plants were shuttered, chemical operations relocated, agricultural methods transformed. Currently, water travels from Danyang Cow Reservoir to Beijing in approximately 10 days, moving at an average velocity of 1 meter per second. Silent, constant, relentless. Then there's the Western Pathway, the corridor that exists primarily in blueprints. The Western route is the most ambitious and controversial of all three corridors. The scheme involves diverting water from the Yangtze River headwaters elevated on the Tibetan Plateau and transferring it to the Yellow River's upper sections. The distance, roughly 300 kilometers, but the altitude variations make this route nearly unachievable with existing technology. The Tibetan Plateau rises above 3,000 meters elevation. Transporting water across such extreme topography would demand tunnels through mountain ranges, pumping facilities at high elevations, and solutions for freezing conditions that could paralyze the complete system. Construction hasn't yet commenced. Cost projections vary dramatically, but certain engineers estimate the Western Pathway alone might require $100 billion. Environmental concerns are substantial. The Tibetan Plateau is a delicate ecosystem, and redirecting its waterways could trigger catastrophic downstream consequences. Presently, the Western Pathway remains a blueprint, an aspiration, or potentially a cautionary signal of how far China will venture to resolve its water emergency. So, following all this engineering, all this expenditure, all this upheaval, did it function? The statistics are remarkable. Since the Eastern Pathway became operational in 2013, it has transported over 51 billion cubic meters of water to northern territories. The Central Corridor, operational since 2014, has transported over 57 billion cubic meters. Combined, the two functioning routes have delivered over 108 billion cubic meters of water to northern China. That's sufficient to fill Lake Superior. Beijing now receives 70% of its water supply from this infrastructure. The city that was subsiding, the city confronting existential water emergency, now possesses access to stable, purified water from the south. Tianjin, China's fourth largest metropolis with 15 million inhabitants, has witnessed its water table stabilize. Farmers in Hebei province can irrigate crops again without depleting underground reserves to hazardous levels. The environmental impact on the north has been primarily positive. Wetlands that had desiccated are being revitalized. Rivers that ceased flowing are flowing again. The North China Plains aquifer depletion has slowed significantly. But every solution generates new problems. Let's discuss what the official reports omit. First, the human toll. Beyond the 330,000 people relocated for Danyang Cow Reservoir, thousands more were displaced along canal routes. Compensation was frequently insufficient. Relocation communities lacked infrastructure. Farmers forfeited fertile soil and received rocky, less productive parcels instead. Second, the environmental toll. The Yangtze River basin is being extracted at unprecedented volumes. Ecosystems dependent on consistent water flow now experience fluctuations. Fish populations have diminished. Southern wetlands are contracting. Water purity remains concerning. Despite rigorous pollution restrictions, agricultural drainage and industrial pollutants still infiltrate the system. Beijing's water from the Central Pathway is potable, but demands extensive purification. Third, the economic viability. The project cost $62 billion to construct, but the operating expenses are tremendous. Propelling water uphill demands continuous electricity. Maintaining 2,700 kilometers of canals, tunnels, and pumping facilities requires thousands of personnel and billions in yearly funding. Water is being marketed to northern territories at subsidized prices. The full cost recovery pricing would render the water unaffordable. The Chinese administration is essentially subsidizing water transfer perpetually. Fourth, climate change complicates everything. The project was engineered based on historical precipitation patterns, but climate change is modifying those patterns. Southern droughts could diminish the Yangtze's flow, making water transfer unsustainable. Meanwhile, shifting monsoons could boost northern rainfall, rendering the entire project obsolete. And finally, there's the alternatives question. China invested $62 billion in relocating water. Could they have invested that capital in coastal desalination facilities, in comprehensive water conservation initiatives, in agricultural transformations to reduce water consumption? Certain economists contend that China built a 20th century answer to a 21st century challenge, a massive infrastructure project when what they genuinely needed was intelligent water management. But here's the reality. Despite all the controversy, despite all the costs, China had to act. 400 million people inhabited water-stressed territories. Agriculture was failing. Urban centers were becoming unlivable. Inaction wasn't viable. And in a larger context, China's water emergency is a preview of what's coming for the rest of the world. According to UN projections, by 2025, 2/3 of global populations will face water scarcity. By 2050, that proportion could reach 75%. This infrastructure represents China's attempt to engineer its escape from a resource emergency. Whether it's sustainable long-term remains uncertain, but it demonstrates something significant. When facing existential dangers, nations will attempt the impossible. China transported an ocean across a continent. They reversed river flows. They tunneled beneath ancient waterways and forced water uphill for over 1,000 kilometers. Is it the perfect solution? No. Is it sustainable? Uncertain. Is it controversial? Absolutely. But it's among the greatest engineering accomplishments in human history, a demonstration of what humans can achieve when survival necessitates innovation. This infrastructure is more than construction. It's a declaration. When water runs dry, we'll transport it. When rivers don't reach our destinations, we'll create new rivers. When nature doesn't comply, we'll engineer our way forward. Whether that's arrogance or brilliance, only time will determine. This is the Planetary File. If this account of engineering ambition and controversy captivated you, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone passionate about mega project documentaries. Drop a comment below. Do you believe China made the right decision? Could this work in other water-scarce territories? Or is this an environmental disaster waiting to materialize? And if you haven't already, subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss our next exploration into the world's most incredible engineering projects and the stories that shape our planet. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.